First and foremost, condolences to Carl Moorhouse's friends and family. A platoon of people that were linked to a dangerous drug and gang feud in Leamington Spar were packed into a Crown courtroom and they stood trial for the of 34-year-old Carl Moorhouse. Now Carl Moorhouse was no angel. He was linked to crimes and also classed as a gangster, and he was fully invested in a tit-for-tat war with the Birmingham gangs. Now Warwickshire police says that the brutal and horrid incident that involved blades and blunt instruments, and it was accumulation of a tit-for-tat situation that had escalated past the point of no return between two rival gangs that both tried to control the drug market in and around Coventry. On a quiet Leamington Spar street at the junction of Leam Terrace and Lower Leam Street, just before 10:30 p.m, Carl Moorhouse had been found slumped in the street, a big spot of red leaking from his chest. His car had been found just a few metres away. Unbelievably, Carl, in such a catastrophic state, had managed to pick up the broken pieces of himself and then managed to get himself to a neighbouring house. During his last few moments before he flitted in and out of consciousness, it was said that Carl had managed to get his phone and actually called his partner Bianca, and through ragged breaths he says, "I'm not going to make it, I've been bladed, I think I'm going to die." When police arrived at the scene, they had not only observed that Carl had been bladed, but also that he had been badly struck with what looked like blunt instruments. His face and body was already swollen and lumpy and bruised. Now police also could not understand just how Carl managed to pick himself up and flee his attackers. With the state of his injuries, it was miraculous. Again, Carl, who was a gangster, was considered such a target that the gang responsible for his had actually made the journey from Birmingham to Leamington Spar in order to at the very least seriously harm Carl Moorhouse and get him out of the drug business, or at the very worst K him and teach Carl and other drug dealers that selling was not a good idea. Also, they wanted revenge for a previous incident on one of their men. No matter the circumstances that had arisen between the two gangs, Carl did not deserve to die. He was an active dad and partner. Now, ambulance crew whom had arrived with police had quickly read Carl's vitals and they were bad. They gave him pain relief and stemmed a hole in his chest before putting the dad into the back of the ambulance. Carl was then blue lighted to hospital, but sadly he did not make it in the end and he was pronounced dead in the hospital a few days later. Now this was now firmly a investigation, and police wanted to find out just who was responsible, who was heinous and brazen and had the gall to K a man in such a quiet street in full view of witnesses. Because witnesses came forward to explain what they had seen, they were forthcoming. Because Carl Moorhouse was so popular and there was already intel to suggest that Carl was part of a gang and he had tensions with gangs in Birmingham, police quickly were given the names of people who may be connected in the savage and brutal ambush. There were 9 people in total, and they were notoriously savage brothers, then 28-year-old Reuben Knoll and then 31-year-old Terry Knoll, who used to be footballers and rappers, and then they turned into gangsters. There was also 27-year-old Adam Padley, whom all 3 of them would eventually be jailed for the A Callum Huburn and a 35-year-old Emma Bennett had also been found guilty of manslaughter. Now, if not anything else, the Birmingham gang were loyal to each other fiercely, because according to rumours, Carl had been singled out for a previous incident on 30-year-old Callum Huburn, so this was retaliation, and it was a must, and everybody was all too willing to play their part. Now, police were able to determine that a gang of 5 had taken 2 separate cars, and they travelled from Birmingham to Leamington Spar on May 20th. They had also placed a number of calls and text messages to known people in the area to find out where Carl Moorhouse was, before determining that his distinctive Ford Fiesta had been parked in Lower Leam Street. The gang had parked nearby and noticed that Carl was not in the car, So the mission turned into a covert operation where the gang had staked out Carl's car, waiting until just before 10:30 p.m. Now Carl was seen walking down the street, normal, without a care, about to approach his car. However, before his hand could even touch the handle on the driver's side door, the gang had exited their two cars and they made a short sprint towards Carl. Now he had been ambushed by Reuben, Terry, Adam, Callum and Gemma. They allegedly struck him while his back was turned in a cowardly attack. To make matters worse, the incident did not take place away from the view of residents, meaning that traumatized neighbours had witnessed the ferocity of a single man being ambushed by 5 gangsters. They were struck like a wounded animal again and again and again, and when he was badly injured, they then bladed him in the chest, and then to make sure that he was finished off, they then struck him again, until the point where his face and body were a lumpy and swollen mess. Again, Carl Moorhouse was no angel, and a self-professed gangster too, and had been called a loving father to his children and an amazing partner. His 2 lives were separate. Remember, though gravely injured, Carl managed to flee the people responsible for his injuries and make a short trip towards a neighbouring house. Carl at the time would have been weak and in excruciating pain, but of course he had a lot to live for. In his final moments he called his partner and told Bianca, "I've been bladed, I'm not going to make it." At this point the Birmingham gang did not even look for gravely wounded Carl Moorhouse. Instead they got back into their 2 cars in full view of witnesses and then made the trip back to Birmingham, but not before taking Carl's Ford Fiesta 2, which had been found abandoned just a few streets away. Now those who witnessed the M would prove vital at trial, as a number of people did come forward to give their take on what happened on that gruesome night of May 20th, where Carl Moorhouse was essentially aimed right in front of their welling up eyes. Now it was also brought up in court that Carl had been pronounced dead a few minutes after midnight on May 29th, when Reuben, Terry, Adam, Callum and Gemma were all handcuffed and arrested and told that they will be charged with the M. Everyone denied all charges and answered no comment to every and all questions, multiple interviews. However, evidence such as mobile phones had firmly placed the 5 people in Leamington Spar at the time of the M, and all mobile phones had pinged off the same signal tower, which proved that the gang had been together. Also, DNA belonging to the gang had been found in Carl's Ford Fiesta, and if that was not enough, witnesses were able to place Reuben and Terry and Adam at the scene of the crime, and witnesses were able to tell the jury and police it was these 3 gangsters whom had went berserk and did their best to kill a man in full view of the street. While Reuben Noel and Terry Noel were found guilty of the M, GBH and robbery, they were jailed for life with a minimum term of 24 years. As for Adam Padley, he was found guilty of the M2 and jailed for a minimum term of 14 years. Callum Hewburn and Gemma were jailed for manslaughter. However, 4 others were found not guilty of all charges, and they were 35-year-old Tor Randall, 23-year-old Darnell Sapleton, 24-year-old Javante Scott, 25-year-old Jemani Cunningham. They were all acquitted of all charges. Does the crime match the sentence? Let me know in the comments. Stay safe.